Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Sinikka Waugh, and I am so delighted that you are here on the Even Better podcast. This is part of our continuing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us all just have better work days so that we can co-create better communities. And I am delighted to have with us today my friend Hannah Moeller as our guest. Hannah, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
This has been so fun, and it's a long time coming because there's been lots of fun stuff going on since we first started talking about this. And I am delighted that we're finally here getting to have this conversation. This is so great. So we'll get to maybe hear a little bit about some of the cool things going on in your world. But let's tell our listeners a little bit about you. So I'll share what I know about you, and then you can share a little bit more about your story. But for our listeners who may not know Hannah Moeller, so if you know me, you know that I'm here in the Indianola area in central Iowa. Hannah is also right here with me in Indianola, and I love that. She describes herself as a former gifted kid from Indianola, Iowa, and acknowledges that this land belongs to the Sauk and Fox tribes of the Meskwaki Nation. So I love that about her bio and her intro. And she is one of those folks who is so sensitive to paying attention to people and who they are and where they come from. And she empowers people to be inclusive and to build workplaces and spaces in their lives and in their existence that are inclusive. And I just really delight in this about who she is and in my own experience with her. I have known of Hannah for many, many years. My personal connection to Hannah goes back to the fact that my husband was one of the teachers that she encountered in her high school career because, born and raised, or at least raised in this part of Indianola. And I know she's married to her high school sweetheart, and her high school teacher is my sweetheart of many years. So that's kind of fun. And I know that she's a mama to 3 boys and 2 cats, and that she is full of bright ideas. And I know that Hannah is a lifelong learner. And I know that Hannah is a coach. She's a consultant. She's got experience in the finance industry, and that she has really done this amazing thing about helping people find ways to align with their dreams and do more of what brings their soul joy. And one of the things that I've seen Hannah do, like in real life, is Hannah does stuff that lights people up. And when Hannah is empowered and Hannah makes other people empowered, like people just walk taller and people just shine brighter when they're in Hannah's presence. And Hannah walks taller and shines brighter because Hannah is so centered in who she is. And it's just really, really, really beautiful. So Hannah, I thank you so much for being part of this conversation and for being part of today. Thank you. What did I miss in this conversation? How else would you like to tell your story? What have I left out?
Yeah, that was very kind. Thank you, Sinikka. I think the connection there too is I was actually in your husband's class when I met my husband. So he's the one who introduced us. So it's a pretty important connection for us. That fun small town thing, right? Yeah, so I mean, my experience is in the finance industry, but really the through line, I would say, through all of my different roles and different projects I've taken on is what lights me up is figuring out what lights up others. So I love hearing people's stories. And, sometimes we don't always know what gets us excited and what lights us up and what kind of feeds our soul. But when you talk about it, other people can see, right? So I love being able to be the person to say, hey, I just saw you really light up about what you said there. Tell me more. Right? How can we do more of that? How can we do more? How can you incorporate that into your life and into your work? And, whether, I was a recruiter or a financial advisor or business coach, that's really been the through line for me. And that's what gets me excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see you live this. Like I see you walk this space, and this isn't just something you talk about. This is something that you do. And when you have been a financial advisor, you were serving a population that was largely underserved. And part of your mission in serving that population was because you saw a need and you saw a way to help people light up in how they could reach their own goals. And it was that same, it was that same connection. Like, hey, wait, I saw you light up there. Let's talk about that. Let's do more of that lighting up part.
Yeah, my advising practice was primarily families and business owners, people in the community who are women, the LGBTQ community, and people of color. So my mission was to allow people to have a seat at the table who maybe historically have not had a seat at that table, and make financial planning accessible to everyone.
And I'll just share a little bit, one of my stories, and maybe there's a place where this would show up in our conversation naturally. But for our listeners who don't know Hannah, and maybe for our Inspired Connections listeners who will recall this moment, there's this story about Hannah that was it just characterizes Hannah so beautifully, and it's how Hannah shows up. And I think you'll hear it as our listeners hear this story, and why it's so important that we listen to this podcast today, and why it shows up in our everyday examples, and why it ties to this 4 steps to build confidence. That's our theme today, and live an expansive life. So we've got a women's networking group in Indianola that meets once a month. And that particular day that I'm recalling in mind, meeting outside, there were a group of us seated around kind of in a circle outside. And Hannah comes walking up to the circle. And I hadn't seen Hannah in some bit of time, and I don't remember how long it had been. And Hannah comes walking up to the circle, and I know that I'm supposed to have known Hannah, but it had been a bit. And I'm not sure who else in the circle that Hannah knew, but Hannah walks up to the circle, and she walks up with all of this confidence of a woman who owns this space. And she sits down in the circle, and she's like, "Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm supposed to be here." And the confidence, like, I think about my own certitude walking up to a group of women at 8 in the morning. I'm not sure I would have had the confidence to walk up to a group of women that I didn't know super well, and sit down and join the circle. And I want that confidence. And we all sat a little taller, and we're all like, we want this. We want this confidence, and we want this brightness. And we're all like, Hannah, we're so glad you're here. So that, my friends, that is why we're here. We're here listening to Hannah Moeller talk to us about 4 steps to build confidence and live an expansive life. Now, I have to tell you, when this title came through, I had to look closer. I had to put on my reading glasses, because it says 4 steps to build confidence and live an expansive life. It does not say live an expensive life, which is really, really an important distinction, because she isn't has been a financial advisor. So an expansive life, like a life to the fullest, a life to the fullest. So Hannah, guide us through this. Why this topic? I mean, I know why this topic for you, but why did you pick this?
Sure. And hey, if your expansive life is expensive, like, go for that. I'm not here to put anyone down either. But I appreciate you sharing that story, Sinikka, because the truth is, we all go through confidence ups and downs, highs and lows. And I don't know that I could say with confidence that I was feeling that great about myself at that time. So a little bit of sort of a fake it till you make it. And it could have just been, I was going through sort of a mental career shift before I made the actual career shift into executive coaching and consulting. So I was feeling a little bit of, okay, where is my place? Where am I going next? And I'm someone who, when I'm in that sort of liminal space, usually mentally before physically or practically, I really do have to go back to, okay, who am I as a person? What am I all about? And that's some of the things that I'll talk about today in building confidence. So I don't know if that made sense, but I appreciate you sharing that story, because it kind of just goes to show that when you take the time to work on yourself and understand that that can be slow, it can be a long process. People see the energy you're trying to put out, even if you don't always feel it 100% inside.
And I will tell you, as an observer, we saw it, and we fell head over heels in love with it. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's normal to have those ups and downs, those highs and lows, but I really believe we can flatten that curve a little bit so that the lows aren't so low or last so long. And when we're high and we're feeling good about ourselves, we're really confident that we don't lose ourselves either. Sometimes we have a big win and we think, okay, I can coast for a while. I don't have to keep putting in effort. I don't have to keep doing my morning meditations because I'm good. I'm a big believer in taking care of our mental health. And if therapy or medication is something that helps you with your mental health, sometimes, frankly, a lot of the time people will get to a place with their therapy or their mental health where they're like, hey, I'm good. They stop doing it. So then we get down to those lows. So it's really not at all about not having bad days, but it's about kind of flattening the curve and raising the bar. So that our normal state of being is one that we're very sure of ourselves and walking in our own truth, which is kind of a hokey thing to say, but it's but I believe in that. So we're just going to roll with it.
All right. So you talk about 4 steps. So we're here talking about 4 steps to build confidence and live an expansive life. So the first step that you've articulated is to identify wounds. What do you mean by that, Hannah?
Yeah. So when I'm reflecting on things that I've done in my life to get to a place where I'm more confident in myself and just who I am as a person, it truly starts with figuring out what is it that kind of makes our stomach feel uncomfortable? What is it that gives us the anxiety, or what is it that makes us feel like we're less than or not enough? Is it perfectionism and something's not perfect, making you feel like, oh, well, that means I'm not perfect or I'm not good? Is it, wow, I made a mistake, and not just put the cereal in the refrigerator? Like it's a mistake that actually affects somebody. Do we go to, wow, that means I'm a bad person. Nobody wants to be around me because I made a mistake. Is it loss? Is it rejection? What is it for us that is sort of that deep confidence wound? For me, I really realized that when I make mistakes that affect others, like I did something wrong and now somebody else has a problem because of what I did, I take it really personally. I feel it really deeply. And it sends me into that spiral of I'm unworthy, I'm a horrible person. Nobody knows how terrible I am. I think we all have this negative self-talk that's really insidious. So even when we are working on ourselves, when we get triggered by those wounds, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not gonna help you identify that, but I think that it's really important before we can step into our own real power and confidence, we have to know what it is that can knock us off that road. I think when we do experience that, it's not that we're trying to never feel bad. I want to keep reiterating that, but taking with us a practice of mindfulness, where if we experience that feeling of, oh, I made a mistake, I'm bad, noticing it, acknowledging, oh, I'm triggered or I'm feeling something based on what happened, and then redirect that. So what that looks like is, okay, I made a mistake. Now I'm having this negative self-talk, taking a mental step back and saying, okay, I'm having the thought that I'm a horrible person. I'm feeling disgust with myself. What is this experience trying to teach me? So it's not just telling ourselves, no, don't feel that way, don't feel that way, don't feel that way, because that doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, don't think of an elephant, right?
Right. But instead saying, okay, I am feeling this way. It's a feeling. It's not who I am. It doesn't make it true just because I'm feeling this way. And then think, okay, what is this experience trying to teach me? So, maybe it is trying to teach me that it's okay to make mistakes. I literally have that written on a bookmark. It says it's okay to make mistakes. And I think once we kind of know what our wounds are, that's going to help us if we get into those lower parts, to those lower parts of that roller coaster, I should say, helps us get out of it quicker.
Yep. What can I learn here? What can I take from this? So not I am that feeling, not I am that, like I'm Joey and I'm disgusting, right? From the Friends analogy, right? Not that I am that feeling, but I'm feeling this. What can I learn from this feeling? What can I take from this? How can I pick myself back up from that? What's the lesson here? What's the learning? What's the nugget that I can twist and take forward?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And that comes from identifying it. What's the thing? What's the thing that's hurting? And what can I learn from it? Okay, let's go to the second one then. This one's easier for the dyed-in-the-wool optimist, who is the Sinikka that you're talking to here, right? The celebrate strengths. Okay, that's a fun one. So celebrate strengths. What do we do with that?
Yeah. So I am a big believer in, I think it's Marcus Buckingham, who has written a lot about strengths. I saw him speak a few years ago, and he talked a lot about, we don't want to just figure out what are we bad at and try and get better, because we're only going to get so much better. But if we can figure out what we're good at and get really good at it and do a little bit more of it and a little bit more of it and get a little bit better, that's how we change the world. That's how we change our inner world. That's how we make an impact on the people around us. It's not by trying to get so good at the things that we're just not naturally interested in, but to really figure out what are we actually good at. Now, sometimes that can be hard, especially if you are in a confidence dip where you're like, well, what am I good at? I'm not good at anything. I'm sure, I hope that's a universal experience. I think it is to have those moments sometimes throughout our life. There's a couple different ways that I like to kind of figure out what my strengths are when I'm in a moment of not really knowing. So there are lots of different things out there. Something that I like to do is I am an assessment person. I love taking personality tests. I love taking different strengths tests and figuring out little facets of personality and kind of taking those nuggets maybe with a grain of salt, but it's a good prompt for me to think about myself. So there's lots of tests online. There's lots, you might be taking them through work. Strengths Finder, I know, is a big one. Big Five personality test, Myers-Briggs, like all of those personality tests that you might take somewhere are going to have a description at the end that says, typically someone with this set of answers is really strong in these areas. They may or may not all pertain to you, but for me, I think it's that prompt, like I said. And another way that this one's a little bit more vulnerable.
Okay.
And that is asking others.
Ooh.
So I have literally done this before where I will reach out to friends, or we had this, through work where it was sort of a team builder retreat situation. And the leaders asked colleagues to write something positive about each person in attendance. Mm-hmm. So, going to your family, your loved ones, your close friends, and maybe you are even going to your boss or your clients and saying, what do you like about me? What are my strengths? Why do you work with me? What's something that I do that impacts your life in a positive way that I don't realize I do? Because a lot of the time when we're not feeling sure about ourselves in some area, we can't see that about ourselves. And it can be hugely impactful to lean on those people and say, hey, I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm struggling with confidence, or I made a mistake, or I'm feeling this lack of perfection. Can you help me out here? And people will love doing that too. They will love building you up, right? If there's people that care about you. So yeah, that's something that it is kind of that boost of confidence, and keep those, right? Don't just read them and then delete them. If it's a text, type it up. If it's a letter, if it's an email, save those things in a folder. You can title it whatever you want, right? Hannah's wins, or I'm the best, an affirmation or something like that.
What's in a Hannah win folder? What's one of them that's got you smiling right now?
Yeah. So I just remember this is actually something that's someone said to me years ago. I started a new job in a new office, and someone said, Hannah's the hire of the year. It was kind of an offhand comment, but it just made me feel really good. So I wrote that down. Hannah was the hire of the year 2013, and I stuck it in the folder. Yeah. I mean, that was just something, again, it doesn't have to be deeply personal either. I mean, this was someone that I'd known for a couple months, or any time that I'm working with clients and they say, wow, you explained something to me in a way that no one's ever helped me understand before. Then I'll write that down and I'll say that client said this made me feel good.
Yeah.
Helps fight that imposter syndrome a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I am somebody that I really do love a good label that I relate to. So, now we don't want to base our identity on labels, right? Because labels are things that can go away, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
If I place my whole identity on being a wife and then something happens with my marriage, I don't want to lose my identity, right? But still having those labels that we embody for a time, at least for me, I found that helps me understand and put words to my lived experience. So whether that's a religion or faith tradition or spirituality or lack of, I shouldn't say lack, different.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's your Enneagram number or your zodiac sign, maybe it's a neurodiversity. Like, hey, I identify as being on the autism spectrum, or I identify as being neurodiverse. That can be really freeing to put a label to that. Maybe it's sexuality, maybe it's race, maybe it is in relation to others or to your career, but feeling embodied in those labels, I think, can really help us know who we are as a person. And again, I would caution against getting too attached to a label, but does that make sense?
Well, it does. And you said for a season or for a period of time, I think that that's really useful. And the one that's coming to mind was the season of time when I had preschoolers and the period of time that mothers of preschoolers, like that, there's a very distinct season when I was a mop. Like I was a mops, and I understood that mothers of preschoolers have very specific needs and very specific identities. Like we want things, we want other people who understand that we are tired, and we want things to be clean, and we just want a minute in the bathroom by ourselves. And like there's a very specific identity that comes with that season in our lives that doesn't persist, right? Once they're past preschool, it changes. The world changes. And before they get into I mean, when you don't have kids, you don't relate to it. And by the time they're in college or whatever, it's different, right? It changes. It's temporary, and it didn't absorb my whole identity, but there was a label that made sense at that moment. And I see what you mean about understanding that temporary. It helps me understand some things and kind of lean into that right now in this moment. This helps me understand kind of who I am.
Yeah. Now, if you had this identity in your head during that time that I'm an independent person that doesn't answer to anybody, you'd have some cognitive dissonance, right? Because when you have preschoolers, like, you answer to them. I don't care if you say you're the boss, you're not the boss.
You're not the boss. You are at the whim of the tyrannical toddler that has just melted down. Right?
Yes. Oh, funny.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I love it. Okay. So I'll pause for a second. If you're just joining into the podcast, you got to go back to the beginning and join us and hear the background and hear a little bit more about Hannah Moeller. We are here with Hannah, and we're learning 4 steps to build confidence and live an expansive life. We begin with identifying your wounds and then moved on to celebrating strengths. And we're going to move into the third one, which is practice self-love, which you've also got some other terms for this. Let's talk about your other terms, because I've quoted you recently, Hannah, and I don't know if your ears have been ringing, but I've quoted you because your definition of self-care is perhaps my favorite definition of self-care. And you've been getting all kinds of credit because I've quoted you in probably 6 different circles lately, including some of my training. So let's talk about self-love as your third way. And it's a practice. It is a practice. You got to keep getting better at it as a way to build self-confidence. So talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. So first of all, when it's a practice, that means that you might not be good at it at first. Like we don't practice things that we were born being perfect at. So when I think of self-love, I really think of that. Okay, what is it like when you are giving love and sharing love to others, to your partner, to your children, to your family, your friends? When you are opening your heart to others, sometimes for a lot of us, it's a lot easier to be forgiving and give grace and patience and empathy to others and not to ourselves. So that's, when I say self-love, that's what I mean, is giving that to ourselves as well. That grace, that empathy, that patience, that encouragement. Self-care is the term we hear a lot. And I think that has been co-opted to some degree to mean do whatever I want. Now, if we again think about, and I did not come up with the term self-parenting, I have read it and heard it, and that's what I have taken to heart is this idea of self-parenting. So in relation to self-care, if we think of self-care as it's doing whatever we want to feel good, and then think of that as if we were children. Our kids want to do whatever they want to feel whatever feels good in the moment. But we know as a parent, that's not healthy. That's not going to actually improve their life. If my son wants to eat 6 Pop-Tarts for breakfast and say self-care, that's we know as adults with our brains fully formed that that's probably not the best, most caring thing to let our child do. Yet we let ourselves do things that we know are probably not the best to let ourselves do. I'm bad at this too. I'll tell my son, hey, no screens at the table. We're eating dinner. No iPad at the table. And I have to really fight the urge to not, pull up my phone and be looking at my stuff and scrolling Instagram and checking this and that and be mindful and in the moment. So that's, I guess, what I think of as self-parenting is taking care of ourselves in the way that we would take care of a child. And that can be some of just going to bed on time is a huge self-care practice. Eating a balanced meal. I always make sure my kids have a fruit, a vegetable, and the protein on their plate. Do I do that for myself? No. Would it be more self-caring and loving of myself if I did? Yes, I'm working on that. It's a, like I said, a practice. But I think that once we've identified what triggers us, what those wounds are, once we kind of get a sense through what our strengths are of, okay, this is where I am going, this is who I am, this is who I maybe want to be or aspire to be, then we have to really love on ourselves and and speak positive words to ourselves all the time. Do positive things that we know are going to help us in the long run. And this is hard, you guys. This is something I think that unless maybe you're a monk or a saint, I think we all struggle with this at some point. But I have a couple of exercises that I like to do and that I've coached others through. So I'll kind of run down the list a little bit of some ideas.
Yeah.
If that works.
Yes, please, if you've got ideas.
So the first one is, it's kind of similar to that asking other people what they like about you. Mm-hmm. But when is the last time that you said out loud 3 things that you love about yourself? I think that actually going through and saying it to other people, right? Not just in the mirror, although that's a good start, but actually say it to other people. Sinikka, I love it about myself that I am a good listener and like to hear other people's stories. I love that I'm a patient parent with my children as much as I can be. Just going through and saying, what do you love about yourself? And say it to another person and ask them, what do you love about yourself? And you walk out of that little conversation feeling really good.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
So I would challenge everyone listening to this to go do that today. And sometimes it takes a little bit to think of, it can be hard. The other thing is, what do you need to release from your life that isn't serving you? Maybe it's just doom scrolling social media. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe it's watching the news. Maybe it's alcohol or caffeine or donuts for breakfast. Maybe it's a toxic person. If you're trying to build up this positive self-talk and every time you run into this person, they're making a comment that's kind of snarky about you as a person or how you look or how you act or how you seem, maybe you need to release that relationship. We only have so much time and so much life to live. And if something is no longer serving you, even if it used to, doesn't mean it still is. Even if it's a week off or a 30-day break, or maybe it's, hey, I'm just done with that. That can really help you build your confidence, because for the time period or the eternity that you're releasing of that negativity, then every day that you don't engage with it, you're keeping a promise to yourself. And when we keep promises to ourselves, that builds confidence.
It builds confidence. Yep.
So, sometimes it's just even saying out loud, like, hey, I'm going to make the bed today. Then making the bed and saying afterwards, I told myself I was going to make the bed and I did it. It just reminds you, hey, I'm getting this.
Yeah, that reflection at so it's a do what you said you would do, and then reflect on it and give yourself credit for doing what you said you would do.
Yeah. And then I think just any time that you have a hobby or something that you enjoy, whether it's exercise or playing an instrument or getting coffee with friends, like making a point of doing that more and making time for play and being silly and having fun, that's going to fill your cup. And when your cup is full, you're going to have more confidence. Something that I do that is like an instant confidence booster, and like, don't panic here. Taking a cold shower.
Oh, good heavens.
So this was an idea I learned from Melissa Urban, if you're familiar with her. And, you don't just start on the coldest temperature, kind of start lukewarm and then inch it colder. I'll play club music and for 30 seconds, and I'll work my way up to longer, but for a set period of time, standing in that cold water, it activates your nervous system. It actually stimulates your vagus nerve, which we know has to do a lot with everything from anxiety to digestion and everything in between. But cold stimulates that vagus nerve. You get out of that cold shower, even if you were only in it for 20 seconds, and you feel like you can take on the world. Okay, and then one more. This is kind of the one we've heard the most, and that's affirmations.
Yeah.
This is not a new idea, I don't think, for most people, but the thing is, it works. If you tell yourself, I am happy enough times in a row, I am confident, I got this, I'm hot stuff, whatever it is, the more we reinforce the beliefs that we want to have, our brain pathways actually change. So psychologists call this neuroplasticity. I think growing up, a lot of us were taught, and the science at the time believed that brain cells only die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Brain cells can't be regrown, but research has shown that that's actually false. So our brains can create new pathways and even new neurons that reinforce what and how we think. So it's kind of the same concept where if you buy a red truck and you only see, now you see all the red trucks in town. The same goes for affirmations and confidence. The more you tell yourself something, I can handle this difficult conversation. I love my soft tummy. The more you say this, the easier it becomes for our brains to make those connections subconsciously and actually believe them. Yep. So this isn't just some new age philosophy. This has been proven by neuroscience.
They actually work. Like, I can do this. I can do this. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. Like that little red engine was right. Like, we knew this.
Yeah. And I would even take away the think, like, I can. I know I can. That's confidence, right? I think I can. That's less confident. I know I can.
I know I can.
You may not think I can. I know I can.
I can. I've done it before.
Yeah. So self-parenting, self-love, taking care of ourselves, building ourselves up, I think that is one of the most important things to live that expansive life. And what I mean by expansive is not just having confidence within ourselves, but being able to radiate that light to others.
Well, and I wish, so this is it's an audio podcast. I know we're getting close on time, so we're going to have to go through that fourth point sort of fast. But one of the things, it's audio podcast, so you can't see what I can see. And you have to, listeners, you have to just picture this. But so often, and men, I guess, who are listening, close your ears for a second, but so often we women take up less space. We close ourselves in. And men, when we're insecure, maybe you do this too, that where we take up less space because we're almost hide in the space that we're in. And there's something about that word expansive. There's about confidence. When we're feeling confidence, like a power pose, your shoulders go back, your hands go at your side. You take up all the space that you own and then some. You take up all the space that you deserve. And that expansive, I love that word, that expansive life. I deserve this space. I own this space. I have the confidence to take up all the space that is mine in this moment. And Hannah, you do that so beautifully, and you inspire others around you to own their space, not to hide in themselves, but to sit tall, to stand tall, to walk tall, to be proud of who they are, and to look others in the eye, and to hold their chin up, and to walk expansively, and to own their space. And that comes from confidence. And so I just love that you do that, and thank you. And that's going to take us right to our fourth point, which you have as be generous with gratitude. How do you do that?
So I think the first three really help to build our confidence. And then that fourth one, be generous with gratitude. This is what's going to lead us into that expansive life. Mm-hmm. Because when we are happy and comfortable and confident in ourselves, the next step is, like I said, sharing that light with others. Mm-hmm. So maybe that starts through prayer, through meditation, mindfulness, journaling about what you're grateful for that day. Maybe it's just writing down like a one-line journal. This was what I was grateful for today. Or keeping a notebook, and just as you're thinking of things. And it could just be, I'm grateful for pens that write really smoothly. It doesn't have to be friends and family, the two Thanksgiving, things right every time. I'm thankful for pens that write smoothly. I'm thankful for coffee mugs that fit really comfortably and cozily in my hands. I'm thankful for the big things too. But as we're cultivating this practice of gratitude and being generous with our gratitude, we don't have to save our gratitude only for the really big life things. Mm-hmm. And then tell others. If you're hearing this and thinking, wow, I am grateful for my coworker I worked with 6 years ago who said that nice thing to me. Like, I'm going to go and send him a note after this because I kind of was reminded of it. But letting people know, whether that's actually writing a handwritten letter or postcard, that makes a huge impact, but so does sending a text. That's a practice that I have really tried to work on over the past few years. Is if I'm sitting here and I think, wow, I just really appreciate my friend. They're really cool. I'm going to send them a text like, hey, I think it's really cool that you're doing this. Or I'm just so thankful you're my friend. It's hard to find friends in adulthood, and I'm glad you're one of them. I like to sometimes think through different years of my life and just think back, okay, what was I doing in 2015? Okay, who really made a difference in my life that year?
Yeah.
And then send them a message.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, because you'll think of people, oh yeah, that was really helpful that she watched my kid for free.
Yep.
I'm gonna send my cousin a text and say, hey, I know I've said this before, but I just really appreciate you took care of him for a week, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's that extra vulnerability step I kind of mentioned before of asking people what they appreciate about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking it home and reminding yourself what you are grateful for about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of takes it full circle, right?
Full circle. Yeah. Oh, and I can see how when you stop and think about what you're grateful for about yourself, that's gonna, right? So it's raising those valleys so that they're not quite so deep for quite so long in the ups and downs as you were talking about at the beginning.
Yep.
Oh, this has been really lovely. So what's making you even better these days, Hannah?
I would say for me, it was paying more attention to what I put into my body. So I stopped drinking alcohol about 3.5 years ago, broke my caffeine addiction about 3 years ago as well. So that is really what allows me to have kind of a clear headspace and be able to be my best self and be my best self for others. That's just personally, kind of my health journey, but I have to shout out that that's been such a huge game changer in my life.
Good for you. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I am so grateful. If our listeners want to reach out with you, of course, they can always reach out to us at Your Clear Next Step and we will get them in touch with you. If anyone wanted to reach out to you in any other way, is there a way that you would want them to find you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram. I'm not super active, but I'm on Instagram. It's just at Hannah R. Moeller.
All right. So they can reach out to you that way, or if they want to find you, just reach out to us and we'll happily connect you.
Yes.
So Hannah, thank you. What a joy. Just really, really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Sinikka. I really appreciate what you're doing. And right here in small town Iowa with Your Clear Next Step, I think you're doing really important things. And I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of this podcast.
This is a joy. This is a joy for sure. And for those of you who are listening, if you are just now dialing in, man, you missed it. You got to go back and you got to rewind and you got to hear all these great things. We just heard from Hannah Moeller. She was talking about 4 steps to build confidence and live an expansive life. Thank you for joining in. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.